I finally decided to dissect the grand rivalry between Spongebob SquarePants and Phineas and Ferb. I don't think I would be remiss to label either of these animated series as modern classics. There's a lot of people into them. They have long, sprawling histories to them, at least compared to their contemporaries. There's plenty of people that have pitted them against each other, and not without due cause. As much as I will run my fucking mouth about every Phineas and Ferb topic available, this is the one conversation that I wouldn't regularly have. Part of the reason why I've never weighed in on this discussion on any serious level is because before I was hyperfixating on the Triangle Show, I was hyperfixating on the Sponge Show. So I have a very unique perspective, having seen both of these franchises grow into the bastions of the medium that they are today. I watched the first movie in theaters, I had a SpongeBob-themed birthday party, I definitely wanted to be him at one point. It was disgusting. I watched all of the fucking ratings traps, every single one. It was raw, it was rough. I've always been very tepid to not crown any one series as the victor, because deciding which one is better, or greater, or more important is such a fine line I wouldn't even know where to start. It's important to establish that there's a lot of pieces of media that are important within the context of their respective histories that are not necessarily of high quality. Many people know Clutch Cargo as that really weird joint from the 50s that featured the guys that took recordings of their mouths and superimposed it over some stills of some crudely drawn characters, you know? Nobody's gonna make the argument that it was Space Ghost Coast to Coast in disguise, but it is, if not important, at least a memorable part of early animation history. Do you know what a unique layer of hell it is to be a Hanna-Barbera fan in 2023? Yogi Bear is part of the reason why you have Owl House today, but ain't nobody give a shit. I feel like old man yelling at cloud. It shouldn't be. The inverse could also apply in the sense that not every show that is high quality is necessarily important to the culture. Popularity is certainly not a shortcut to determining quality. I can confidently say that both of these series seem relatively important and high quality for their time. Both of them have had a substantial impact not only on their respective audiences, but the animation industry at large. And without either of them, the field would look like a much smaller, much emptier, much less colorful place. As a consequence of their bountiful success, I think many would argue that they deserve to run as long as they would want to. As long as the original creatives behind them want to continue producing them, they should be allowed to do whatever they want. And, I don't know about that one. See, every Nostalgia Critic clone from the late 2000s, early 2010s told me that all good things must come to an end. And they were clearly fucking wrong. I mean, we're on season 35 right now? Fuck. Housebroken's gonna beat it out soon. But in a pragmatic sense, you do have to think about that philosophy in the context of animation in specific. Having long runners that can span hundreds of episodes is relatively rare. It's not easy to keep up with narratively or financially. Well, not exactly as rare as long-running animated series. Having a cartoon that can reach a natural conclusion and has the opportunity to give a cohesive ending to its story is still something that's relatively rare. Even the brightest stars within the last 10-15 years of development are still doing dumbass shit like ending everything on a cliffhanger and expecting another season or a movie or something. Fucking tragic. My man Duncanville would never do this to me. And I think there is some type of belief that the longer a show stays running, the harder it would be to write that theoretical finale. Phineas and Ferb has like 9 of them in the pocket. I can at least come up with 1 or 2 off the bat that I'd totally be okay with them ending at that particular point, had things worked out differently. SpongeBob also has several episodes that functionally could serve to be a finale of sorts. The more seasons you amass, the more stuff you have to do. The more time you get to think about how you would top yourself. And in theory, it would make writing a functional finale that much harder. You know, there's more to consider. There's more characters to integrate, more storylines and things like that. I know to some extent this is a problem that Phineas and Ferb is already dealing with. Historically, both of these series were known for having relatively loose continuities. At best, Phineas and Ferb can have serialized elements to it, but there's no sense of a consistent timeline. And an attempt to try and make that with the genesis of Milo Murphy's Law kind of just overcomplicates a lot of things. SpongeBob has a lot of lore and a lot of fun characters to revisit, but outside of like rehashing an old season 2 episode every once in a while, it doesn't really become an issue for them, as far as I know. But the main question around long-running series is concerned with quality and how a series can evolve if it cannot maintain a similar level of excellence that it might have been at before. But in any event, answering any of these questions related to narrative fidelity and long-running fatigue and everything kind of has implications on how this would affect the other series. It's definitely the variable that I think would get us closer to a satisfactory answer, but it's still not the end-all be-all. When I started planning this one out, I tried to track down some numbers and some figures, because knowing how many watches were sold for either franchise would, it helps sometimes. And I could find absolutely none, at least for the boys in the backyard. So we don't know exactly how much money either have made. There's definitely some estimates you can give with regard to SpongeBob's impact, but none on the other show. I've instead gathered a list of fun facts that are kind of insignificant on their own. I don't even know if you could carve out a decent narrative just from combining them, but I did kind of find them interesting off the bat. Some of these I didn't already know. SpongeBob definitely has more episodes. Phineas and Ferb has at least 100 half hours to its name, and SpongeBob easily has close to 300. In spite of this detail, Phineas and Ferb actually accumulated their episodes at a much faster rate than SpongeBob. They've traditionally had longer seasons, they've had way more episodes squeezed in there, and as far as I can tell, the first half of the series production was kinda crunched, even by television standards. The Disney cartoon has also acquired more celebrity cameos than SpongeBob has. This is incredible. I remember going through this a few months ago because I was just kind of curious. So I looked through some lists, went through my memories. Across about 300 episodes, 3 movies, several specials, and a musical, you can narrow down the SpongeBob guest list to around 100 figures. The exact number I tallied was 106, but that may not be entirely accurate. It would have been funny if it was 104, maybe one day. Maybe one day we can knock out a few figures and make it a round number. What the fuck am I saying? Phineas and Ferb had around 171, so quite a few more. Now, to be fair to SpongeBob, it is much easier to bring people over to the backyard than it would be to have them dive down into the depths of Bikini Bottom. You may consider this a bit of a cheat, a bit of an exploit, since Phineas and Ferb had a talk show made of pretty much nothing but guest appearances. That will bump up the list quite a bit. Not enough to fall below SpongeBob, but But SpongeBob also has documentaries to its name. You can pull the most random collabs out of the hat that would make sense. On that note, SpongeBob has had way more musical collabs. You have no idea how powerful the Pink collab was back in the day. You just had to be there, you know what I mean? Tell me how these motherfuckers greenlit a Disney cartoon featuring Weird Al as the main character, and they didn't give him enough money to write the songs with Weird Al in the first place. Yo, come here. We're gonna fight, Disney. We're gonna fight. Some of them also share a couple guest stars between them. Not as many as you would expect, but, the important ones. Both of them managed to get Davy Jones on their respective shows before he died in 2012, which I think is a fucking brilliant idea. The Phineas and Ferb episode was released later, but they were probably made around the same time period, and the episode he's in is just peak perfection. Nobody talks about it because it is kind of nonsensical, but look it up. Season 3, Meatloaf Surprise. Masterful storytelling. Just by sheer volume, SpongeBob, it definitely has the more recognizable slate of classic characters. The other show's standout characters tend to be a bit more obscure, or at least have a reduced presence in the show compared to what their presence online would eventually morph into. Movie quality between them, kind of debatable. I don't think either one collection has one up on the other. It kind of varies. Their first movies, solid. Loved every minute of them. They hold up well today. Second ones, I haven't watched the second Spongebob movie. But the second Phineas and Ferb movie, I like it more than I did when I first watched it. I definitely appreciate it more. The third SpongeBob joint was okay. I didn't have an issue with it, but it did feel like an extended episode in structure. Didn't have that grandiose that I assume the second one would have, and I know that the first one possesses. What might be more surprising is the fact that for a vast majority of their runs, their ratings were actually competitive with each other. They were hovering around the same averages. For the last few episodes of Phineas and Ferb Season 4, that number dropped dramatically once they started premiering them first on Disney XD. And it wouldn't even be the first time in the show's history when they would do that, but before that point, they were easily consistently scoring 2 million, 3 million, maybe even 4 million. SpongeBob has a slight edge on that, but its numbers were also pretty consistent. Both series actually have strong international followings as well. As far as international dubs go, I can't really pass judgment. Disney TV dubs, at least of the cartoons, tend to be pretty good, and they have been good since the 90s as far as I can tell. Same would apply to this show. For SpongeBob, not really well read. I know some of the dubs are funny, like some ironically and some not, but I don't know how far quality is going. I think both of their secret illegal Persian dubs are actually quite well done, thank you very much. Both of them also have scientific discoveries attached to them. A new species of sponge was named after this guy. Meanwhile, this happened.
Okay, you guys might remember this. Okay, so about 20 years ago, I designed this character. Perry the Platypus! And I colored him a teal green because I just thought it looked cool, but since then I've had to answer this question a lot.
You know, platypuses aren't green.
And kids' heads aren't triangles, what's your point? But guess what just happened? This is a real thing that just happened. They just discovered that platypuses have a special kind of bioluminescence, and in ultraviolet light, they glow green. I called it! I called it!
I do want to clear the air right now that both of them have won Kids' Choice Awards. That's right. This entire feud is over. Everybody go home. The showdown is finally resolved. Once again, the day is saved. Thanks to all these international brands of the KCAs that you knew nothing about up until I mentioned it at this very moment. Now here's where I might lose some people. And this is gonna sound absurd, but you have to trust me on this one. A few years ago, Spongebob the Musical proved itself as one of the greatest experiments in Broadway history. After about 1,100 performances, it wrapped up, but in that time, it has earned the respect and adulation of many, many crowds that doubted it. It fucking swept the Tony nominations and it only won one award, but still, that's an accomplishment. It is not the first time that a musical based on a cartoon has hit the stage, but it is arguably one of the most important, because the visage of SpongeBob, of all franchises, being able to pull this off flawlessly sends a message. In some way, more subdued franchises like Peanuts or Annie or some other third thing I'm blanking on right now, at times can make any average cartoon look more mature, more distinguished. Of course you can put it on Broadway, you know? These characters have depth and meaning. And having a cartoon like a real goofy looking motherfucker take home the lion's share of attention and respect from the general theater going public is truly inspiring. Theoretically, it opened a lot of doors for other ideas, like a Steven Universe musical or a Miraculous that'll never happen, but, you know, other stuff. It is truly a big feat and not every series could pull it off, including, well, I don't know, guys. I don't know if they could do it. Despite the fact that the series is very musically inclined and that it's baked into the DNA of the show, and a lot of the original architects of the series came from musical families and had a very strong sense of what they wanted to do within the context of the series, I don't know if any of that translates to a more sophisticated form of a theatrical production. May I remind you that for this stage show tour, they reused 99% of their songs. There was one original one cooked up, but it was used in the first 5-10 minutes. I don't even think I caught all of it once I stepped in. I mean, it was fine, but can they continue that for the whole duration of the show? Who's gonna take care of the book? Who's gonna take care of the score? Even if we wanted to try and get celebrity collabs to fill out all the songs, would you be able to gather enough folks that can understand the legacy of Phineas and Ferb and transfer that into this format? I don't know. I truly don't know. And as much as this would seem like an obvious slam dunk to people, I don't know if it would succeed. A lot of people don't even believe that there are bad Phineas and Ferb songs. I can guarantee you there are plenty. There are enough to fill an album.
Where's that swarm? What's that drone? Something's buzzing close to home. It's B-Day, and I'm feeling fine. Man, it sure is great to be a baby. You can sit all day and suck your thumb.
It's a backyard hodgepodge. It's a backyard hodgepodge. It's a backyard hodgepodge.
I'm handsome, I'm so good looking. I'm easy on the eyes. Don't you know that I'm handsome? I got chiseled features. Try not to look surprised when you see that I'm handsome. Pyramid sports, pyramid sports, pyramid, pyramid, pyramid sports.
Doodly doodly dee. Diddly diddly doo.
Whooping off!
If you go into the woods, then this will happen to you.
I do recognize that it sounds far-fetched by itself, but asking for a Broadway show for this specific property on the basis of it being musically inclined, it's a little one-dimensional. It's not necessarily going to satisfy everyone's needs. It certainly would not have been fair to write off its ability to stage an entertaining production on the basis of it being a particular type of cartoon. But at the same time, I think it would be kind of patronizing to assume that it would be so good because you like all of these tracks from season 1. Either way, if it is ever attempted, I think these guys need to be put in charge of it. Just let them handle it. Please. Please. That's all I could ever ask for. Like the conversation itself, I don't think this video has a real good cap to it. But I do think it's worth exploring further, because as far as I can tell, these two are going to be going at it for a long time. Much longer than any of us thought was possible. But above all, it is important to remember that both of them have merits. Whether you're a fan of one or the other, or both, or none of them, they all have their special qualities. They all have a unique drive, a unique passion to them. And even if you don't understand it, it's important to try and respect those qualities for what they are, and what they've brought to the table. Next week, I think we'll finally rehash for the 147th time how far Family Guy has fallen from its original roots as a wholesome family sitcom, and eventually end up ranking its wackiest modern episodes against American Dads to see who would win. It's gonna be American Dad. It's not even a contest.
Good morning, USA.